I'm Tony Brown. The illegal immigration crisis is proving one thing: all blacks don't think alike. My guest on this program is Dr. Carol Swain, a professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University and editor of Debating Immigration. Welcome to the program, Dr. Swain.
It's a pleasure to be on.
You had a book out a few years ago, and it was, you won all the awards. What book am I talking about, and what year was that?
Well, my first book won 3 national prizes, and that was published in '93 and updated in '95. It was called Black Faces, Black Interests, the Representation of African Americans in Congress. And since then, I published The New White Nationalism, Contemporary Voices of White Nationalism. Both relate very much to the immigration issue.
Now, wasn't the second book nominated for a Nobel Prize?
A Pulitzer Prize.
Pulitzer Prize.
Pulitzer Prize,
yes.
And it was nominated, but it actually did not win prizes. I believe it's the most important work I've done in my life.
All right. Now, we today are going to talk about the new most important work in your life, and that's Debating Immigration.
Yes.
It is, even by both sides of the spectrum, acknowledged as illegal immigration, and I'm distinguishing from immigration. The reason being that I don't find much debate in America over immigration. Americans generally agree that immigration is a good and healthy thing for the country and an American tradition. It is the illegal in front of immigration, or illegal aliens, that it has created the tempest in a teapot that Americans are really concerned about. So if I might, let's start with your book. You edited this book.
Yes.
And your particular chapter makes what point, and explain your point of view in this on the issue of immigration and illegal immigration.
Well, first of all, immigration is a new topic for me. I moved into that area because there were some issues that were not being addressed by the scholars doing research on immigration or by the mainstream politicians. I felt very strongly that African Americans were being negatively impacted. I kept waiting for the scholars. I kept waiting for the politicians to speak out, and nothing was happening. And so eventually, in 2005, I had a conference in which I brought together large numbers of people from different sides of the spectrum to discuss immigration. And at that time, I sought someone to write a chapter about the Black Caucus and immigration, and there were no takers. And so I wrote the chapter, and I looked at who represents African Americans when it comes to the immigration issue. And I concluded that it's certainly not the Black Caucus, that somewhere along the way, the Black Caucus lost its way or sold out the interests of black people. And they've taken a position that, that we're going to have this rainbow coalition, there's no one being harmed, all immigration is good, whether it's legal or illegal, and that's not true. There are some people that are being hurt. They're low-wage, low-skill Americans. Many of them are African Americans and Hispanics. Legal immigrants are being hurt as well as blacks.
Now, did you find anyone, you said the Congressional Black Caucus was not representing the interests of African Americans on that issue. Did you find anyone, meaning any organization, that was?
Well, you know something, there's a chapter in the book written by Jonathan Tylove that talks about strange bedfellows. On the immigration issue, there are some Republican members of Congress that are representing a position that I think that's very pro-American, that that looks after the interests of people that are being hurt. And there's some groups like the Center for Immigration Studies. They've done quite a few studies. And then groups like FAIR. Many of the groups that have taken a restrictionist position, they are immediately dismissed. You know, it's not being part of the mainstream, it's being haters, and all sorts of, words are thrown at people that take a restrictionist position. But there are people being harmed. It's not a win-win for America. And so the groups that are actually representing African Americans may be groups that other people would dismiss as racist.
Now, let's talk about the racist aspect of this. The open borders advocates, organizations, and individuals have devised a strategy of implying or not being subtle about accusing people who oppose illegal immigration of being racist, I suppose because most of the people who are illegal immigrants that we know of, particularly from Latin America, are brown people, i.e. not white people. Do you accept the definition that people are racist because they oppose illegal immigration?
It's not only that we are being called racist, some people have been called racist, we're also being called non-Christians and nativists, xenophobic, fearmongers, arms of the KKK. I think it's ridiculous how far some people will go to silence the truth. And the truth is there are Americans that are being harmed. Some of them are immigrants. Many of them are African Americans. And this cannot have a good end unless some people start speaking up. And there are many Americans that know. It's not that I know that the members of the Congressional Black Caucus are well-educated people. They know history. They have studied history. And they are being too silent on this issue. And the only time I heard recently that during a congressional hearing that some members of the Black Caucus challenged the guy that's the head of Google, but they challenged him because some members of their family had not gotten jobs in the high-tech industry. So they were saying that Google was not hiring enough of college-educated blacks. And this was told to me by a Hispanic activist that had attended the hearing.
What is the harm from, the estimate is that there are in this country, living in America illegally, something between 12 and 20 million foreign nationals. What's wrong with that, in your opinion?
I think there's so much that's wrong about it now and also in the long run. And one of my biggest fears is what happens when they do get amnesty, because I believe that we will not try to identify the people or make them go back home, and so many of them will get to stay. If you look at the social welfare programs that were put in place to sort of help those that were disadvantaged get ahead, to help them reach their American dream, those programs are underfunded. Many Americans can't even reach their American dream, and I think the children of the new immigrants, many of them will be poor, they'll be uneducated, and they will be very angry because they were promised something that we don't deliver on for our own citizens. And so the problem is you have American citizens that are just grappling, trying to hold on themselves, trying to reach the middle class, and then you have millions of other people here. Some of them are taking jobs, housing, affecting the educational system, and there's scarce resources for all of these people. The harm is when the clash comes and people are fighting to survive, and you see some of that in parts of the country, and we're not talking about certain regions anymore, it's all over the country.
What do you think of the statement made by the former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, who stated that illegal aliens are taking jobs that not even black Americans will do?
Well, you know something, I don't buy that there are any jobs that Americans won't do. Even in the agricultural jobs, there are Americans that are immigrants, or Americans, a certain percentage of Americans still work in agricultural jobs. There's a low percentage, but I don't buy that there are jobs that Americans won't do. Every time there's an immigrant raid and they take away the illegals, you see Americans lined up to do those jobs. And when I travel, many times I'm at hotels where African Americans and Caucasians are working in the hotels. They are bussing the tables. They're doing those jobs that Americans won't do. And so I don't buy that for a minute. And I think that, it's just, it serves his interest, to have the illegals over here because they send out billions of dollars back to Mexico. And you may remember a few years ago when the Mexican government issued a booklet on how to break into the U.S. Safely.
What about those people who have come to the United States illegally, and they will work for lower wages than Americans will work for? There are instances of that as well. There are instances that Americans will not work. For example, there's a town down in Georgia, it's not Good Hope, its name escapes me, where the ICE raided and they deported, or locked up anyway, a number of illegal aliens. And the factory previously had a large number of African Americans, because African Americans constitute a large percentage of the population of that town, who had left because of low wages and working conditions. They came back and took the jobs, but the African Americans did. But they didn't last long because they would not accept the conditions, the demands of management, the no health care, poor sanitation, things that our American workers have come to regard as standard, as a standard work environment. So there are instances in which we don't, and they had to work for lower wages.
But if that company wanted to stay in business, they would have to improve the working conditions, and they would have to raise the wages. And one of the, I won't even say it's an unintended consequence. One of the consequences of the illegal immigration is that we have stopped investing in human capital, and we've stopped trying to raise the standard of living of American workers and the working conditions. I have a friend that has done some research on just working conditions in many factories and plants. And there are factories in the U.S. where people urinate on themselves because they're not allowed to leave the production line to go to the restroom. And you know, those are not conditions that many Americans will put up with, but employers have gotten to the point, you know, they have some labor that's willing, you know, to take inhumane conditions, and so they're exploiting that labor. And what bothers me is that there are just so many people out there that they're pro-illegal immigration, they're on the side of the downtrodden, but they look the other way when it comes to inhumane working conditions and the fact that these people, sometimes they're working for lower wages, sometimes they're not. I had an experience recently with a realtor, and it's property I was going to put on the market, and he said, I have someone that can do your yard. And he came with this Mexican couple. I asked if they were legal. They sort of, you know, he was paying them. He implied that they were. They couldn't speak English, and he was paying them $12 an hour, and all they knew how to do was chop, chop, chop. They did a lot of damage in a short period of time, and they were making $12 an hour. And in Nashville, you know, people are lucky if they make $8 to $10 an hour. And so they were being well paid, and I don't see that they were qualified. It was just that this particular person preferred paying Mexicans $12 an hour than blacks or whites, you know, $10 an hour. They probably would have done the same job and not messed up things.
Here's, speaking of support, here's a gentleman who, in the book you edited, whose name is, his last name, Joel Millman. According to your book, he's a correspondent for the Wall Street Journal's Mexico City Bureau, and so forth. He wrote, Wall Street Journal writer, quote, America, strictly speaking, is not a nation. We have no common culture. What's common in America is the now. America is an economy. More precisely, it is a market. End of quote. In other words, we don't have a national credo. We should not be guided by borders. We should not be guided by concerns for who is American and who is not American. This is
right.
A journalist who offers stories to the public. What is your response to that?
To me, there's so many people that are educated, many of them at Ivy League elite institutions, and they believe that we shouldn't have borders. And they, they sit in the ivory tower and they spin ideas, and maybe they really believe these things, maybe they don't. I think they're destroying America, what's left of it. And unless the American people, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, everyone stand up and demand accountability from the politicians, there's not going to be a lot left pretty soon. So I think it's very, very dangerous. But there are people that believe that. They say no borders,
well, if we
no
don't,
standards,
if he says
no
that,
America.
If he says this is a market, if he says this is a market, and we agree that America is not a nation, therefore, if you're not a nation, you don't have the authority to have borders. And if you're not a nation and we are a market, the idea is to drive wages down.
They don't care. They don't care about the consequences.
But if you drive wages down, American families cannot consume.
No, and I mean, what we end up with is everyone at a third world living standard. And maybe there is a they out there maybe that's the goal. I mean, maybe this stuff is not unintended. Maybe there's some vision out there that's not in the interest of the American people. It's not in our interest, but someone thinks it's in the interest of, some body of elites or capitalism.
President George W. Bush has not been aggressive in fighting illegal immigration.
Well, I mean, it benefits big business, and a lot of that's Republicans. Yet, I still say that there are Republican members of Congress, and I speak as an independent, that have taken a position that I would say is very pro-American, pro-values, and but those people have pretty much been maligned and dismissed as racist. But it benefits big business, but it doesn't benefit working people. And the middle class, they may think they're benefiting from cheap labor, but in the end, they pay more in taxes when they contribute to the educational system, health care, the criminal justice system. It's not a win-win for America.
Do you have evidence, or do you have any any surveys that that indicate the opinion of African Americans toward illegal immigration?
Yes. I mean, there are surveys that will look at Americans and break it down by race, and I've done some focus groups. And if you look at blacks, whites, and Hispanic, second generation, there's almost no difference. All of them are opposed to illegal immigration. I hate calling it immigration because it sort of dignifies it. When we think about immigrants, we think of something positive and people that come to the country the right way. But most Americans, or overwhelming majority, are opposed to illegal migration. And they would like to see the numbers reduced. They see the consequences.
What is wrong with breaking the law? Why does the nation need the rule of law? Why is it important that people obey the law? Why not have
a state of nature?
Sanctuary cities.
Let's just have a state of nature.
Okay.
Just let everyone be a law unto themselves. I mean, it seems like when it comes to certain groups of people, that's what they want. I mean, if you don't have laws, and if you don't respect laws, and if you don't enforce your own laws, then you risk chaos.
You're a professor of law, aren't you?
Well, I'm a professor of political science and secondary.
In a law school.
Right, okay.
At Vanderbilt University.
Yes, and
so it's suppose the President of the United States, President George W. Bush, decided that he did not want to enforce the laws of the United States, the immigration laws.
And it started before him. Like, we have winked at it for so long, and the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, became bolder and bolder and bolder.
Well, we had an amnesty under President Reagan.
And we said we'd never do it again.
And we grew from 3 million to 12 to 20.
That's because as soon as we thought there were 3 million in 1986, and 7 million showed up to claim the benefit. We say there's 12 million now. And if the government says 12 million,
one major
it's
report
probably
says
double.
20.
I know, I'm saying if the government says 12, last time they said 3 and 7 showed up. So we can bet it's more than that. It's probably double the government estimate. And you know, of course, every time there's an amnesty, it encourages people to hope for the next one. The number of people that are trying to enter illegally sort of skyrockets as soon as you mention amnesty.
Well, you don't really need amnesty if you have open borders.
No,
I mean, if you don't have to have a law. If you just open the border and people come across, if that's not an amnesty program, I don't know what it is.
Well, they're also saying, well, these people are poor, they're trying to feed themselves,
They
but they
are.
don't have that sympathy
And
for people that go out and commit crimes.
You are right on the money, which is why I don't know one person who is sane who dislikes the illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever one calls them, who come here for a better way of life. I have not met one of them that I don't like and don't care for.
Oh, no, we have compassion for all human beings.
All human beings. However, when 20 million come, one must make decisions not related to the character of an individual in a group, but to the ability. For example, if I have an automobile and I can hold 5 people in the automobile, if 20 people come, I have to tell 15 people I don't have room.
That's right.
Not because I don't like the other 15. I just don't have room in the car. I love you. You're a nice person, Dr. Swain. I just don't have any more seats. You're number 6. And if you're running a country, you have a finite resources for schools. You have finite resources for education schools. You have finite resources for jobs. You have finite resources for health care. You don't have an infinite resource, so everyone in the world who's a nice, hard-working person can join your country.
No, and there's another problem, is that we are not doing what we should be doing for our own citizens. And if you think about the family, I would say that the people that are in the boundaries of the nation state, that their needs have to come first, and that we are not better off if we try to let the whole world come here and we decrease the standard of living for everyone else. One of the things that many of us do, and I'm sure you do too, is that we give money to charities and missions. We help other countries. We are able to do that because we have some excess. If it ends up in a situation where everyone's poor, we're not going to be able to help ourselves.
Tell me, do you feel that black people are obligated to accept illegal immigration because the majority of the people who are illegal aliens are not white?
No, I don't believe that that's the case. I think that we have an obligation to this country, the United States of America. We are Americans. There is an American interest, and that American interest is maintaining national sovereignty. We have an obligation to obey and respect the laws of the land. This is not the civil rights movement where you had American citizens that were being denied basic human rights. The immigrants that come here illegally don't have the same moral claim as the American citizens that had been denied justice, you know, for centuries. And
well, they don't have the same legal claim either. The civil rights movement was citizens of the United States,
right,
i.e. mostly African Americans and people who were not fighting with us. Citizens of the United States fighting for the rights of a citizen of the United States.
And you know something too that I find very problematic, and I can say that I'm a proponent of class-based affirmative action based on need. If you look at the Civil Rights Movement, Civil Rights Act of 1964, and all of the legislation, the bills that were passed, immediately it was opened up to people from all different countries. It diluted the impact it could have had for African Americans. And so, you know, blacks have had to sacrifice a lot. Every time, you know, that they almost get themselves to a certain level, another group comes in and they get displaced. And blacks are the ones that are hardest hit by what we're doing now. We're always at the bottom. And for the foreseeable future, it seems like we will be, because whenever our politicians or our so-called black leaders, our black elites get in position, I mean, there are a few people like you, but that's the you're
not
the exception.
An elite. I am not an elite.
Yeah.
Nor are you.
Right.
Yeah, you can be well off, but you don't have to be an elitist.
But these people,
I don't like elitism
and
either.
I mean, I don't know how they sleep at night. How can they sleep at night knowing, you know, that they have been, I use the expression blessed to achieve a certain stature, and all they care about is themselves and people of that social class, and you know, they're not looking after, they're not being responsible. It's all about them. I found that very problematic. I don't know how they sleep at night.
Well, I think it is problematic, and I would like to refer anyone who does not believe that African Americans are harmed by illegal immigration. Not immigration, because that's a trick. Illegal immigration. To go to the Census Bureau report of 2002. And I reported it in my last book, and it will clearly document how African Americans and legal Hispanics and Latinos are hurt by illegal immigration. Dr. Swain, you've been a wonderful guest. I thank you so much for being with us, and thank you very much for coming.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Tony Brown Productions produces this program and is solely responsible for its content.